Hi, everyone. Good to be here today. And, right, gonna go one way back. So, I've seen some of you already at the various events that Nomad City has organized this week. I've seen some people who would like to work remotely. I've met a lot of other speakers. And, when you go to these kind of events, you have the classic question popping up, which is, what do you do? And I don't really like job titles, so I tend to tell people what I actually do, which is helping people and organizations to work remotely. And I get this question asked all the time also, of course, outside Nomad City. So what's interesting is that after this stage, people ask me a recurring question. This is usually the most common question I get asked. It's a fair question, I suppose, since it's thanks to technology that we can work remotely in the first place. And it's what tools do you use? I respond and say, well, I use a bunch of tools, but I also have a lot of processes. And tools are great, but without processes, they're not enough on their own. So it's not just about what you have, but also how you use it. And I've seen a lot of teams having the same tools, but they're using them in completely different ways. So ultimately, they're going to have a different impact on the way that they work together with their teams. So I work at Mural as an online collaboration coach. And at Mural, we look at both tools and processes. So Mural is a tool. It's an online whiteboard. For those who don't know what that is, imagine like a virtual wall in the cloud that you can add sticky notes to and draw and write on and add images. So it's a very collaborative tool, and you can have people using it from anywhere. And it looks something like this. On a small scale, you can have much bigger walls and people adding things, and you can see who's adding what. But basically, what I've observed as I've seen people using Mural and also just like collaborating remotely in general, using other tools and other processes, is that the tool on its own is not effective if you don't have the right mindset and the right behaviors to go with it. So that's what I tend to help people with, people who struggle with online collaboration. I'm trying to help them understand what those kind of behaviors would be and what skills they would need, which is why I'm here today to talk to you about the soft skills that are needed for remote work, because it's not just about the tools or the hard skills. And when it comes to a job description, if you're looking, for example, for a remote role, there's a lot of remote job boards out there. This is like a typical thing. This is an example that I found. They'll ask you for the usual soft skills, which are things like flexibility, adaptability, motivation, drive, excellent communication skills. You have all those things. This is actually a really good example because it really puts all of them. And that's great. I agree that these things are important, but I think that for future employers and prospective remote workers, there are some skills that are missing from this kind of description. And I'm going to talk about these in a second. But I just want to start with a why and take a step back and think about why are soft skills important in the first place. And there's two ways of looking at this. We can look at that for organizations. So having people with great soft skills in your team is going to help your company remain meaningful and important both to your customers and to the employees that you've hired. So having the soft skills within your employees, is going to help leverage the productivity within your team. Is going to help your company culture. It's going to help keep talent, and then overall, improve people's roles and help them scale up to other leadership roles. But then soft skills are also important from an individual standpoint. So as a person, you want to develop, you want to grow in your career and be successful, and you want to demonstrate professionalism. So all of these soft skills are going to help you get to that stage where you can also deal with complicated team dynamics, where you can get promoted, you can continue building good relationships with your clients, also with your colleagues, and then overall, hopefully enjoy your job a lot more. So coming back to the soft skills around remote work, what I showed before, that job description, was a good example. I kind of grouped the top 3 skills into these. These are the ones that you will see in a lot of blog articles and guides on remote work. They'll always talk about good communication. They'll always bring up something around empathy and emotional intelligence. And they'll talk a lot about being independent, being driven, having that autonomy to work remotely and be disciplined. And I do agree with all these things, as I said before. But I think that these are not specific only to remote workers. I hope that any team, regardless of where you're located, whether you're all in the same office or not, I hope that you can all have these skills. Otherwise, it might make things a little bit complicated while we're working with others. So I try to find 2 soft skills that are more specific to remote work. I'm not saying they're exclusive to remote work, and I'll go into detail in a second as well, but without these 2 skills, I think that as a remote worker, you would struggle a lot more with your team. So let's start with switching. When we think of switching, or you hear the word switch, you might think of a light switch that you're turning on and off, or you might think of something that is switching back and forth between 2 things. And that's pretty much what remote workers are doing all day long. They spend hours and hours a day switching back and forth between multiple things. So you're switching between a lot of tools. You're switching between devices, you're switching between screens, you're switching between browsers, you're switching between tabs between browsers. And I work very closely with the customer experience team at Mural, and I ask them to send me a list of the tools that they are using on a daily basis. And this is just a selection of what they send me. There were actually more tools, but I just couldn't fit all of them, wanted to make it still readable. So as you can see, there's a lot of tools that people switch between. And this brings me to the first subcategory of switching. So actually, I've split switching into 2 parts. The first part, for me at least, would be channel fluidity. And I would expect somebody who's working remotely to master this skill with time, which is basically the ability to switch and focus between different tools and devices and channels. And when you think about it, as a remote worker, you're going to communicate everything you do on through some kind of channel. You're going to be creating things in channels. You're going to be completing tasks in different channels, and you're going to constantly switch between these things. So it's really important that you master this skill so that you're not, wasting your time, and you're also not being overwhelmed. But if you think about it already in your personal life, you might be already overwhelmed with all the digital information that you're getting through your phone. But when you're working remotely, it goes on a whole other level. It's much, much more, a lot more communication coming through. So I want to give you an example. This was one of the first online workshops that I gave about 2 years ago. And I had this idea of doing this workshop with people completely online, people who had never met before. And I was doing this is just what I was seeing behind the scenes. So they were seeing something completely different, which was much clearer. It was just like one, they might have had other things open. I don't know about that, but behind the scenes, I had like Google Docs with all the content I had to send them. I had Slack open to send them links, Zoom open to participate, in the conversation with them, Mural to do exercises. I had a timer on my phone. What else did I have? Google Sheets for my agenda. I had like a whole bunch of stuff open, even Spotify, because I like playing some music during the workshops, during some exercises. And this was very, very messy. As you can see, I've resized things. I've tried to make everything fit, and I was just going a little bit crazy. So I want to then show you what happened 2 years after. This is 24 people. This is another workshop. We were 3 facilitators. And as you may notice, I didn't resize anything to make things fit because I realized that if I had a second screen, maybe that would help me. And then most recently, I've actually given the same kind of workshop on my own on one screen, and I was able to do it. And basically, it's a skill that I've had to build up over the years to understand, what's the best way I can handle so many tools open at the same time and talk to people. It's all happening at the same time, and it's quite complicated. So that's for me, for somebody who's giving a workshop, that's really important, but it's also important for other people. The participants have to be comfortable enough to do this kind of switching. But switching can also happen in different ways. So it's like a mental mindset, like a mental model that you can switch between. Sorry, I don't know what happened to that T there hanging. But basically, if we take Slack as an example, if you're like me and you're part of many Slack teams, I'm part of too many teams. But basically, there's different clients that I work with. I'm part of different communities. I'm part of an alumni group. And each of these Slack teams is a different context. It's a different world that I have to go into. And each time I'm in a different world, I'm going to have to change the way I think and how I present myself. And so it's like wearing many hats. It's like a different brain each time. And then, you have the one-on-one conversations as well. So you're switching between all these different mental models, which is basically the way I like to describe it, this ability to adjust and make decisions and perform effectively in different scenarios and different contexts and different conversations. So again, if you think about the way somebody who's not working remotely would generally organize their day, they may be sitting at the computer now, but if they have to talk to a colleague, they would walk over to the art director, ask them a question. You can reflect about things while you're going there, then you come back, and you have time to actually, process some of your thoughts. And if you go meet a client in town, you're going to take public transportation. You're going to have that time to think about things, talk to the client at the meeting, come back and process things. But what happens when you're working remotely is that you're sitting in this one chair with this one screen or maybe two screens, and you have like the world coming to you all the time. And you think, I can do this, I can just like switch. I'm pitching to a client now, and then next thing I know, I'm giving a webinar. Next thing I know, I have a team call. Now I'm going to work. And so again, it's this switching skill. It's really, it can become a bit overwhelming if you don't know how to do it and if you don't feel comfortable. But switching doesn't just happen in the online world, it also happens offline. So I know a lot of people here who are addicted to traveling, like myself and all the digital nomads. They're switching all the time too. They're switching locations. So every time you move to a new place, you're going to have to adapt yourself to a new surrounding, to different weather, different culture, new food. Everything is going to be different, new language. And then on top of that, you're going to have to take your regular work routines and your personal habits and integrate that into your lifestyle, into this new place, and you're going to do that very quickly. And it's not always easy because you might be jet lagged and you might just have to, process again what you've been doing. And then there's the other kind of switching, which is between working at home and dealing with your personal life. So some of you may remember this event. And we haven't all had this experience of your kid. I love this video every time. Poor Robert Kelly. So luckily, I haven't been interviewed by the BBC yet. And we don't all have to deal with this. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of remote workers who work from home have had some kind of inconvenient interruption happen at some point in their lives, in their working lives. And that's happened to me as well. It wasn't the BBC, but I had just started working remotely about 4 years ago with the first company I was working with. I'm on a call. I was in Brazil at a friend's house, and he used to give jiu-jitsu classes in like his living room. He had all the mats. So I was like, fine, cool, I'm going to give up my call. You have your class, you're not disturbing me. And I'm in the call, and of course they finish the class, and all the guys take off their shirts and start like walking behind me. And I'm talking to my team, to my boss, and I'm like, there's all these guys with their shirts off. Of course they can't tell that they have like clothes underneath. And I was like, it's hot in Brazil. And it was very, very awkward, very embarrassing, and luckily it wasn't a client, and my boss kind of laughed it off, thank God. So what I'm saying is you also have to have that kind of intuitive perception and think, what are all the things that could possibly go wrong in this environment, especially when it's not your usual, but even if it's your usual home office, right? Even if it's your home office, think about, locking the door. I put sticky notes when I'm at my dad's house. I'm like, knock 3 times, don't enter, I'm in a call, because my dad will just walk in and talk to me, and he's done that before. So these are things that, come with time. So I like to think of your workspace, not just your physical workspace, but your digital setup, your online setup, as this kind of turntables. You're the DJ and you're in control. And that's the huge advantage of working remotely. We kind of forget this, but we're in control. Yes, we can choose where to work from, whether it's a co-working space or home, but you also get to choose how to set up your workspace, like the computer, what's happening there. So if you want to become a master switcher, these are very simple tips that I really recommend. I tend to close all distractions, all the tools and the apps that you don't need, just get rid of them if you don't need them right now. I silence all those notifications. You don't need things popping up and reminding you that you got an email. You will check your email 10 times that day anyway. You have a bookmark toolbar just use it in your browser and bookmark all those links, all those websites that you visit very, very frequently, because it's going to make you save a lot of time, especially when you're in a call and you're like, wait, let me find that thing that I have to send you, and then you can't find it. I tend to prioritize my tasks as well, so I like thinking, what are the top 2-3 things, big tasks that I have to complete today? Let me get those done, and everything else I hide it so it doesn't overwhelm me. And then I block out my calendar. I have a lot of calls. People can schedule a call with me, and I send them this link where they can schedule the call, but they're going to see the times that I decide to be available for them. Now, of course, if you have clients in different time zones, you might want to make some days you're available in the morning, some days you're available in the evening, but you don't have to be available the whole time just for anyone. And then give yourself some buffer time. I would apply this to everything. So both online things, if you're going to give a webinar or something, or you have to have a pitch call with a client, give yourself some time before that. You don't have to switch all the time. And give yourself time to process things, but also when you travel to a new place, maybe get there a day or two before you have to start working intensely so that you can adapt again to your new surroundings. So I'll come to the second crucial soft skill that I mentioned in the beginning, which is online facilitation. And I think a lot of people think of facilitation as a skill that's very specific to a certain type of person. For example, a workshop facilitator who is going to guide a group of people through a learning experience, or you're going to think about somebody in a leadership role who has to lead team discussions. But actually, facilitation can be used by anyone at any point. And I just want to show you an example of a call that doesn't really have a facilitator, and we don't really know what's happening. This is working. Oops.
Here?
Yeah.
Hello. Oops, sorry. What? I can't find the Zoom toolbar.
Okay. Emilia, you sent me the link, so we can just go. I can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry, you're on mute.
So this happens even to people who work remotely since 4 years or more. Sometimes, there's an update with the tool, and we don't know where the toolbar is anymore. But actually, also what happens here is we didn't really have a facilitator for this call. And what can happen when you don't have that and you don't know what's happening is you're going to have maybe a very awkward or silent beginning because people are late to the call or don't know who's leading it. They haven't met each other before. You might also have people who are in very noisy environments, and so there's a lot of background noise in the back that it's going to be annoying. You have people who don't know kind of common sense or online etiquette, as I like to call it, which is turn your webcam on so everybody can see you. But I understand some people feel uncomfortable about that. So there's many things, and there's no facilitator to kind of guide this conversation. And this is why sometimes, or many times, online meetings suck. And they don't have to suck. They can be actually really good. So if you can learn how to facilitate online, which is basically knowing how to design and run an online session, you're going to make your life easier for yourself and for a lot of other people. And also, you can help other people step into that role and learn those same skills. So I get actually a lot of people contacting me these days asking me, how do I do an online meeting? I actually don't know how to set it up. Or how do I do an online workshop? And I tell them, you have to prepare a lot of things in advance. Even if it's a 30-minute meeting, you like to prepare things and send some information over to the people who are going to participate so that they can be prepared. So send them the information of, how long it's going to last, what tools do they need, because maybe they don't have those tools. Maybe their company doesn't allow them to even use Skype, so they have to use, whatever it is that their company is using. Who else is going to participate? What time zone are we talking about? All these things, it sounds like a lot, but actually once you start getting into it, you realize that it's very helpful and it's going to save you a lot of trouble later. And then also have a backup plan. Try to invite somebody else from your team to participate in the call. We always try to be at least 2 people from my team so that if I get, I have some technical failure, somebody else can step in and start facilitating and hosting the call. And then once you're in the session, what else can you do? I like to measure the temperature a bit of, the participants. How are they feeling? Checking in with them, asking, what's new. Just not starting straight away with this is what we're going to talk about. But try to make it a bit more human. Just because it's online doesn't mean that we have to lose that. and get some information on how comfortable they feel with the tools. A lot of people don't know that maybe there's these shortcuts to switch between tools, so they're going to look at them in different ways. And be ready to jump in and help. Also keep track of time, that's always very helpful, and have your content and your links ready so that during the call it's very easy to just send things over. And then guide that interaction, make it very engaging, because you don't want to make this facilitation thing like a monologue where it's only you speaking. It is a conversation. So here's an example of the previous team I used to work with. We used to give each other feedback, and I would prepare something visual, like a layout before that people could interact with. Generally it was on Mural, but sometimes it was like on a Google Doc. And then I would facilitate, but I would also co-facilitate or ask others to step in and take that role. And that is actually very beneficial because it helps people stay engaged and away from distractions because they know that their turn is going to come up to talk. And it makes the conversation sound a lot more organic. This isn't a webinar. This isn't just me talking. This is a conversation between me and my teammates. And it's also going to help if they co-facilitate with me to have them step in. Again, if I get kicked off the call for whatever reason, somebody else can take over. So just to wrap this up a little bit, how do we continue developing these skills when we're working remotely? Well, it's very simple. You just have to keep practicing. As I said, it took me like a year or two to improve those workshops I gave in the beginning and to understand how to switch better and how to facilitate better. And the more you're going to do this, the more you're going to be able to have better personal connections with the people that you're working with, no matter where they are. And I like to leave people with something a little bit more practical. So I invite you in your next online meeting, and I'm sure that many of you are going to have an online meeting. Just do these 3 things. It's going to massively improve the meeting that you're going to have. So the first thing is you want to connect with people. You don't just want to start with the agenda, as I said before. Try to make it human. Ask them how they're feeling. Check in with them. Ask them for some news from wherever they are. And you can also use warm-ups or icebreakers or whatever you want to call them. If you need any ideas, ask me. I wrote a whole blog post on these, and they're very fun. And also you want to engage people. So one thing that helps is being visual. You can either share your screen as you're talking or ask people to collaborate together on some kind of document or some kind of tool. And then I like to guide people and nudge people by assigning roles. So I generally assign 3 types of roles. One is somebody to lead the discussion, one person to track time, and one person to take notes. And that already keeps everyone engaged, and then you can switch these roles between each other. And if you're really interested in diving deeper into this, next week, Mural is going to give an online workshop for free called Facilitating Conversations Visually Online, which is a very long name for a workshop, but it's a good one. It's going to be quite long, but it's going to be extremely interactive, so it's not just like somebody talking to you on a screen. It is next Tuesday, so if you apply on this link, there's going to be a form that you have to fill in. It's almost full. We have 20 spots. We're saving 2 spots for people from Nomad City. So do apply today, latest tomorrow, because we're going to have to inform all participants and send all that preparation, as I mentioned before. So thank you very much. It's been great.